Mr. McGee, as I said a moment ago to those that are here, he is on his way over, and as soon as he gets here, the second half of this presentation will be from him regarding exam fees and such like. Now, we are recording this. We'll put it on a private YouTube channel. Because we're recording it, I'm having to use a microphone, which I don't like doing. I normally speak loud enough, but so that the camera can pick it up, we're recording everything. So if you want to take photos, please feel free, but it will all be available to you afterwards. Okay. So this is a briefing regarding external examinations, and it's for students in current year 9, 10 and 11. We're not going to speak about IB exams, although I should say much of this is also relevant to IB as well. So, the plan for this morning, to go through these things so that you know how you can support your child in the lead up to the exams, but also the two crucial moments, the day before an exam and the day of an exam. Mr. McGee, thank you. Hi, this is Mr. McGee, our exams officer. But also then we'll talk to you about ways in which you can support their revision and ways in which you can support them in general with their stress levels throughout this busy period. So, the exams process. For the first time, we're doing exams in each of years 9, 10 and 11. Could I just, out of interest, have a show of hands of parents of year 9 students, please? Year 10 students and year 11 students. Okay, nice spread. Okay. Right, it is new to us, and it's also new to you. We have two main exam sessions, exam seasons throughout the school year. One of them is mock exams. The other one is the genuine external exams set by the exam board. Some of our students are still struggling to make the distinction between the two, and I guess as parents you're probably the same. The mock exams are our internal exams. They are set by us as teachers, they are marked by us as teachers, they don't count towards the final exam, the final grade. The external exams are set by the exam board. We have no control over them. The students sit the exam and we send the papers away to be marked. Okay? Key points on there then. Mock exams, they're important to us, very important, but they don't count as the final grade. What we do use the mock exams for is to make a decision on our entry levels for our students. That's not to say if a student doesn't do well in the mock exams they won't be entered, but we would look very carefully, and a student who significantly underperforms in mock exams is unlikely to make huge progress between now and June, and so could also underperform in the summer exams. And we need to make a decision for the student's welfare as well as their academic grades. Is it right to enter that student for the summer exam? So the mock exams are important to us for that reason. They give us a temperature, if you like, of where the students are at this moment in time and how much they need to learn, how much we need to work with them, and any intervention that we need to put in place. Okay. Exam timetables. Exam timetables will come out to the students after the mock exams for the real exams. They're available to you now, and as parents, if you want to go online, you can do a simple Google search for Cambridge examinations, summer 2018. And the schedule will be there for you to look at and for you to read. Certainly I know some parents, particularly those who may have travel plans or family weddings, etc. in the summer, might find it useful to have an idea of when the exams are going to be taking place. For this summer, the dates are now fixed. You will also be able to see exam schedules for next November and a draft one probably soon for next summer. They are not fixed yet, so be careful if you're using those as guidelines. But this summer is now fixed. It's really quite complicated, and there's a lot of information on there. There are a lot of exams. The students in each subject will be taking at least one paper, but sometimes as many as 3 individual papers for an exam. They won't necessarily all be on the same day, so you need to check very, very carefully. For the students, they will be given an individual guide for their exams. And there'll be copies up around school of the whole exams schedule for them to refer to. I would suggest as soon as you get a copy of that exam schedule, you do 2 things. You put a copy on the fridge door, on the kitchen cupboard, wherever it may be, and you take a photo on your phone and save it as a favourite. Every single year we have students who miss an exam. Every school around the world does. Students who miss an exam and students who turn up in the afternoon for a morning exam or vice versa. Obviously one is much more serious than the other. Right, the number of exams. We changed our approach and our system this year because of the number of exams that students were going to be sitting in year 11 if we didn't do something. As it stands, if we'd done nothing, our students could have been sitting up to 33 exam papers in 25 days at the end of year 11. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's effective for the students. For what it's worth, I'm just completing my master's degree at the moment, and my dissertation is based on early entry for GCSEs. All of the evidence out there, and I've done a 28-page literature review on this, all the evidence out there suggests that it's not detrimental to the students to take the exams early, as long as they've had the requisite amount of teaching time, and as long as they are emotionally ready to take that exam. We're looking very closely at both of those two things. So we know they've had the requisite amount of teaching time, and we're using the mock exams as a test, if you like, as to whether or not the students are emotionally ready. There will be parents sitting here now whose students we recommend do not enter the summer exams because we don't think they're ready. Okay? The vast majority we think will, but just be aware we are going to make a very sensible decision as to whether it's right, particularly for year 9 students, to sit their exams this summer. And if we, in conjunction with you and the student and the teachers, decide this summer isn't the right time, there is a plan in place for what comes next. But I'm not going to go through all of that now. That will be individual conversations with you. Okay. So, the number of exams. In general, our year, let's take this year first of all. Most of our year 9 students will take 2 option subjects this summer. And therefore they'll be taking 2 option subjects in the mock exams on the 12th and 13th of February. Some of our students may not take any exams this year in year 9. We do have some who only joined us last week. We had some starters who joined us about a week before the end of term 1. Understandably, they haven't covered enough content and they're not ready, and they're still settling into life in ISB. They're still finding their way around and making sure they've got the right timetable and going to the right teacher at the right time, working out where the canteen is. All of these things are stressful enough. So some of our students will not be taking even the mock exams because they're just not ready. But for most students, we're looking at the middle column. 2 option subjects in year 9, 2 option subjects in year 10, followed by maths, English, science and languages, and likely to be 1 more option in year 11. Overall, they get just as many exams as they used to get, and if we'd done it in the old system, but they're more spread out and they can focus more on individual subjects. Let's look at the right-hand column for a moment. This year, year 9, the vast majority of students will take 2 option subjects. We have a small number who have expressed a preference to want to study and take an exam in another language other than what we offer here. So, for example, we may have some students in ISB who speak Russian as a native speaker. Okay? They'd be ready to sit a GCSE in Russian in year 9 if they're a native speaker. That's very rare, but it does exist. So, most students will take 2 option subjects, possibly that. The next set of students are year 10 students. If your child is in year 10, they'll be taking 2 option exams in the mock exams and then again in the summer, the real exams. If they are in set 1, correct me if I'm wrong here, just set 1 for maths, isn't it? I thought that now. Maths, set 1 students will be taking their maths exam this year in year 10. For English, set 1 and set 2 will sit the English exam. For science, only the children taking triple science will be taking a science exam in year 10, and they'll be taking their physics exam because they've had 5 lessons all year specifically on physics to prepare them for that exam. And then if we move into current year, this is not current year 11. Current Year 11 students will be taking all of their exams at the end of this year. Okay, so they'll have their maths, their English, their science exams, their option subject exams. Okay? Does anybody want to ask any questions about the exam format and the exam schedules at the moment? Okay. The bottom row on there, the Year 11, is for current 9 and 10 students next year or the year beyond. Okay, so what can you do to support your child? This is probably the most stressful time your child will have gone through in their short lives. And as parents, what we do now makes a huge difference to them. First of all, it sounds really obvious, I know, but be interested in what they're doing. Talk to them about it. Their standard response to you will be, yeah, not done nothing much at school today. Yeah, it's fine. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. I'm fine, Mum. I'm fine, Dad. Leave me alone. I'm going up to my bedroom to study. That's a stock answer from the students. Actually, if you start now to have those conversations, if you aren't doing already, show interest and enthusiasm. They'll open up more to you over time. And then you will actually help them to reduce a lot of their stress. The biggest stress factor for the students is not the exam, as daft as that might sound. It's the organisation and the preparation and the focusing on the right things. The organisation is something that 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old children are not very good at. You only have to look at their bedrooms to know the answer to that one. Okay, but this is where you come in as parents. Show interest in them and help them to be organised. Accept they're going to be stressed. They will shout at you at some point over the next 3 weeks and over the next 6 months. They'll stamp their feet, they'll storm out of a room, they'll get angry, they'll want to leave the dinner table early. I'm not saying ignore it, I'm saying please just understand that part of that is growing up and the teenage years, and part of that is the additional stress of exams that they will be under. Okay, so just keep at the back of your mind, if they're getting angry with you, it's probably not what's just happened, that's just the final trigger. It's actually everything else that they're carrying on their shoulders at the moment. Okay, some people in here will be smiling and saying, oh, I'm glad Mr. Commons has said that, and others will be saying, I've already told them I'll give them something. It's such a common approach to say to your children, I'll give you $100 for an A star, or I'll give you $5 every time you do an hour's worth of revision. It's more common than you would think. What it does is it devalues the exam. And they study for the purpose of the money or the reward, rather than studying for the purpose of the subject and the result and what it means for them. And actually, the students who do better in their GCSEs and their IB exams are the ones who study because they want to get the good grade, not the ones who study because they want to get the external reward, the money or the gift of some description. I can't stop you doing what you want to do as parents to reward them. My advice to you is try to avoid that. Try to encourage them to study the exam for the exam's own sake. Whoa, my mistake. Sorry, wrong book. Encourage and support healthy eating, good sleeping habits and rest breaks. I know some students will say, I've set aside 4 hours this morning to revise from 8 until 12. I guarantee you by 8:30, 8:45, they're a lot less effective than they were at 8:05. Students can't do 4 hours of study without a break. They think they can, and this is where your organisation and support comes in. You need to be able to help them take regular breaks. But equally, you need to make sure those breaks are short breaks, not 15, 20 minutes worth of study followed by a 15, 20-minute break. Okay? But they need your help with this. Healthy eating. Studies have proven time and time again. Fizzy drinks, sugary food, sweets, spike brain activity, so the student gets a bit of a hit of enthusiasm for what they're doing. 10 to 15 minutes later, they're lower than they would have been if they'd had absolutely nothing. Okay, so what you end up doing is that, followed by that, for a long period of time. And while ever they're low, they're not studying effectively. Encourage them to drink water. I know they don't want to. I know they want to go and get a can of Coke out of the fridge. Encourage them to eat and drink healthy. Good sleeping habits. I can't tell you what time to send your children to bed. All I can do is tell you what time my child goes to bed and what time Dr. Geraghty's child goes to bed. My eldest daughter is in year 8. She's in bed by 7:30 every night. Dr. Geraghty's daughter is in year 10. She's in bed by 8:45 every night. You can choose your own bedtimes and sleeping habits for your children. But again, for effective studying for a teenager, they need approximately 10 hours of sleep per night. I know a lot of our students are not getting to bed until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I also know, because I see them the next morning, they have to get up about 6 o'clock. Now, it doesn't take a maths genius to work out they're getting significantly less than the recommended 10 hours of sleep if we allow that to happen and we allow them to go to bed late. They won't like you the first time you tell them to go to bed early. But this is exam time now. This matters, and it makes a big difference. Actually, I'm going to say this here to you. I wouldn't say it to the children, although they'll probably see it on the camera. It makes a difference to the rest of their lives. Because actually their GCSE results are the gateway to the next stage. And if they make a mess of the GCSEs, the next stage becomes more limited. So these are important. And much as it might not go down very well to give them an early bedtime, they will thank you for it in the long run. Okay, revision timetable. I'll come more onto that in a moment, but it's very important that you help them with this. Keep things calm and stress-free at home as much as you can. Younger siblings will very often wind them up at you know what it's like having more than one child at home. They fight like cat and dog, and then the next day they're the best friends, and then they fight like cat and dog, and they're the best friends. The problem is during this time, stress levels are so high, the younger siblings will trigger the fighting like cat and dogs much more often and much more quickly. Designate an area for study, and avoid this being the bedroom if you can do so. Okay? Try and find an area, a room in the house, a place where they can study that doesn't have all of their devices, their books, their usual bedroom stuff around them. Because what they then do, subconsciously, they begin to associate that area with preparing for an exam. Encourage them to stick posters up around that area for each of their subjects. And then we see it all the time. I could tell you which students have done this by standing at the front of an exam hall. Because the students that haven't sit there at their desk, and you can see them doing this, getting stressed. The students that have, you see them doing this. And they're looking where the poster was. They're imagining sitting where they were studying, and they're looking at that poster because that poster had the answer to this question. And then they'll be looking over in that direction. It works. It's proven to work. So find them an area where they can study, preferably away from the area where they relax, i.e. their bedroom. Group study. Group study, again, is proven to be very effective. Not all the time. There's a healthy balance between studying on your own and studying with others. But group study can be very, very effective in preparation for GCSE exams, where they feed off of each other and ask each other questions and support each other's answers and misconceptions and put each other right where there's a mistake being made. If you're going to do this, I would recommend you do it at the allow them to use the dining room table or something similar. I wouldn't recommend you do group study in a bedroom. Okay? A group of 4 girls in a bedroom trying to do study will spend about 50% of their time on study. Okay? And the rest of the time laughing and joking and talking about anything but. Actually keep them in an area away from the relaxing space, away from the social space. They'll put much more time and effort into the study. Okay? Oh, and I haven't put it on here. Music during study. I would no longer need to work if I had $1 for every student who's told me I study better with my earphones in listening to music, sir. Okay? It's utter rubbish. Utter rubbish. And there's countless studies proving it. If your child says to you, I can study and I can concentrate better with my music on, just tell them to stop being so silly and take the music out. It's not helpful. If they're listening to something, a podcast about an event in history or something, and they're studying for their history exam, great. But music is proven not to be beneficial for study, with one slight exception, and that exception is if they're doing something like an art project or that they're preparing a piece of artwork. Okay? But if you're trying to study for a maths exam with music on, it's not useful. Okay, on to the revision timetable then. This is the probably best way you can help them at this moment in time. I have seen amazing study timetables. Really beautiful, really detailed. Because the student spent 4 hours drafting a revision timetable and making it look pretty, which is 3 hours 50 minutes that they could have been studying. Okay? Every student in Year 11 has been given this, and it will be going to Year 9 and 10 students on Monday at the latest. Okay? They don't have to use this one. If they want to use their own, that's fine. If you go online, and I would encourage you to go online, not them, because they'll waste time doing this, but have a look online. You can get electronic calendars for revision that are really quite good, and will send an alert to your phone to tell you it's time to study. Okay, some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, but just have a look. However, this is equally effective. So, write one of these with them, do it with them, and then pin a copy on, again, the fridge door, on a kitchen cupboard, or wherever it might be. And what I would encourage you to do, every time they do the study that they're supposed to, just put a tick and sign it. Okay? Because the students will fool themselves that they've done what the revision timetable says. And they'll fool themselves that therefore they've put lots and lots of time into revision. When the reality is, from a 40-minute revision session, they spent the first 12 minutes finding all their books and getting everything sorted. Then they decided which colour pen to use. Then they sat down and did 2 minutes of study before going to get a glass of water and having a quick conversation with their brother or sister, and so on and so forth. You supporting them and saying, let's draft this together and I'll sign it every time you do what we've agreed you will do. They'll focus on getting the signatures. Because ultimately, the kids want to please their parents. Okay, they want to get good exam results. They want to please you as their parents. They might not tell you that because they're 14, 15 years old, but deep down they do. So they've all had a copy of this. If you haven't got one already, this is your first task this afternoon or this evening. Okay. Other revision activities that are proven to work. First of all, completing past exam papers. Go onto Google, type in the subject that they're doing, type in the exam board, which, by the way, for the vast majority of our subjects is Cambridge International. There are a couple of exceptions that you'll see in a moment, but Cambridge International is for most of them. Type in Cambridge International past exam papers history, and it will give you lots of links to past exam papers, but more crucially to exam answers, the mark scheme that the examiners use when they're marking that paper. Exam board regulations state that every part of an exam syllabus must be examined during the lifetime of that syllabus. And most of the syllabus timelines is for 3 years. So over 3 years they must cover everything on that exam board, and everything on that syllabus. And most of them will cover it 2 or 3 times. So questions are repeated over and over and over again. Now, the question won't be the exact same question, but it will ask for the same underlying knowledge. So the more the students do past exam papers, the more they'll get used to A, how to answer a question, what the examiner is looking for, and B, how frequently things come up and what are the more common topic areas. Okay? Second most effective is to teach something. If you teach someone else, you have to know that topic inside out and back to front, because if you don't, you can't teach it. So get them to teach you. Choose a topic area, or ask them, which topic area are you studying? You're studying in history that you're finding difficult. And ask them to come up with the most difficult topic area. And then say to them, tomorrow night, you're going to teach me for 20 minutes. And ask them questions. Be difficult with them. Say, I don't understand that. You need to put it in a different context. You need to explain it in a different way for me. Because the more they teach you, the more they're embedding their own knowledge and understanding. And again, in the exam, they'll sit there, a question will come up, and they'll think, oh, I explained that to mum. What did I say to mum? And that recall and that memory is helpful to them in the exam. Online practice questions. Sitting at a laptop for hours and pretending you're studying when all you're doing is reading is not particularly useful. But actually, if you're doing past quizzes, questions and that sort of thing online, it can actually be very, very useful. BBC Bite Size is one of the best, and it's split into each of the subject areas. I pay a subscription for my kids onto Mathletics, and it's set to the level that they need. They've already got subscriptions to some maths ones from in school. They've got subscriptions in other subject areas. But there are other websites that you can go to, like Mathletics, that'll cost you about $25, $30 for a subscription. And with that subscription, they can do online practice, which to them is as good as taking a break from studying with pen and paper at a desk. Okay? Studying in 20 to 45-minute blocks with short breaks. Some students can concentrate better than others. That's just life. It's, you know, many people can concentrate more than I can. Get to know your child. Watch them while they're studying from the other side of the room or through the glass window into the next room, and see how they're getting on, and start to help them to understand the point at which they're becoming less effective. And you'll see it because they'll start to fidget more. They'll start to think more and take more time to answer something. Most kids, it's between 20 and 45 minutes. So let them study for that block, and then let them get up, go and get a drink, have a moment's conversation. If you've got the news on the TV, let them watch a news article for 2 or 3 minutes, and then go back to studying. They don't know it, but their brain is still working, and their brain is still retaining and embedding the information they've just done for 20 to 45 minutes. Okay? But without that break, they become overloaded and they actually can't cope. Using different coloured paper for different topic notes. Okay? Get them a stack of sheets of paper in different colours, and put topic notes for one topic on red, topic notes for another on blue, and so on and so forth. And again, when it comes to recall in the exam, they'll think, oh, that topic was on the blue paper. What did I write on the blue paper? It all helps them to retain and recall that information when they need it. Really useful one for them, mnemonics. I learned this morning. If I'd been asked this morning what are the 8 planets in the solar system, well, first of all, I might have said I think there's 9. There's 8 in the solar system. I watched the Year 5 assembly, and they went through my very easy method, just speak to your names. So within 5 seconds of hearing that, I can recall that now. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. All right? Something as simple and daft and silly as that actually helps them. But it's also the process of trying to come up with that mnemonic in the first place helps them, because again, recall and retaining the information. Condensing their notes. Start with a full page of notes, condense the important points down to half a page, and then condense the really important parts down onto one piece of postcard-sized paper or card. 3 or 4 bullet points. The best thing to do with this, when they've got down to their 3 or 4 bullet points on a postcard, is to ask them to give you that postcard, and then ask them to explain what's on it. And what they have to do is go in their own mind and their explanation back from the 3 bullet points to the half a page to the full page. Picking past paper questions at random for them. Don't just let them do a complete past paper all the time. You go through the past papers and say, I've got 2013, 2014, 2015. You're going to do questions 1, 7 and 8 off of each of these. So you've got 9 questions. But you're then selecting the questions for them instead of them selecting them themselves. Okay? Because what they'll do, natural tendency is, I'm going to do those 4 questions. They select those 4 because they know the answers. Okay? Actually, you picking the questions for them puts them under a little bit more pressure. Okay, the day before an exam. We will offer them study leave from school. They don't have to be in school the day before an exam. It's not compulsory. If you want to send them in, or if you think you haven't got suitable arrangements at home for them to stay at home, or you think you know your child quite well and if they stay at home they'll spend all day on the Xbox, they can still come into school, that's fine. But for those students who want to take that opportunity, and for those parents who are happy for them to do so, they can take the study leave day from school. Okay. Evening meal, the night before an exam. A healthy evening meal, not lots of sugar. Try and keep the sugary drinks, etc. to a minimum. No study after 7:30 at night. Okay? I've put there. If they don't know it by that point, they've had all year to learn it. If they don't know it by 7:30 the day before an exam, it's a little bit late. Okay? Much more effective to have a good night's sleep than to study until 11 o'clock or midnight. Try not to let them have snacks after 8 p.m, all of which, the sugary drinks and the snacks, etc., again, spike the brain activity so they don't sleep as effectively, which means they're not as ready to sit the exam the next day. And give them time to wind down before they go to bed. Don't let them study right up to the point before getting into bed. Okay? This is for all of the time, but particularly the night before an exam, don't let them have their iPad, their phone, their laptop, etc. 30 minutes before they go to bed. Okay? Again, it disturbs sleep, so make sure they have half an hour, this should be every night, but particularly before an exam, half an hour, no screen time. TV is slightly different because they sit further away from the TV, and the brightness of the screen is very often different as well. Or reading a book, but not a study book. Oh, that one there. Electronic devices in their bedroom overnight. The night before an exam, if they're panicking about something, and they've got their phone in their room, they'll lay in bed, they'll panic, they'll worry, and then they'll text their friend to find out the answer. Does 2 things. First of all, it keeps them panicking for longer. Second of all, it wakes their friend up and panics them as well. Because their friend then says, oh, I knew the answer to that. Oh, but do you know the answer to this? And before you know it, it's 11, 12 o'clock at night and they're still texting each other or messaging each other. Sensible bedtime. Put your own time on that, but I've told you what my kids do. The day of the exam, keep those stress levels down. They're going to be stressed. They're going to very often bite at the shortest opportunity. Just accept it on that day. You can tell them off the day after. Try to allow them to wake up naturally. Most of our exams, what's our earliest exam time starts here? 7:30. Okay, which is slightly later than a normal school day, slightly later, I appreciate. Most of our exams, though, will probably start a little bit later than that. If you can allow them to wake up without an alarm or without you going in to wake them up, please do that. Again, their brain wakes up much more refreshed and ready. Healthy breakfast, make sure they have breakfast. They'll say to you, I'm too nervous to eat. Make sure they have something. It does actually calm them down. Avoiding coffee and fizzy drinks. Some students will want to study for an hour or so on the day of exams. Some students will say, I don't want to go anywhere near that, I think I'm okay, I'm ready. Don't force them one way or the other. Okay? Again, if you try to say to them, no, get your book out, you've got an exam this afternoon, and then they don't want to, what you're actually going to do is raise their stress levels, and vice versa. So just let them take it their own way on the day of the exam. And get them to school in plenty of time for the exam. Right? I suggest 45 minutes. They don't need to be here 45 minutes before the exam because they're not going to do much in that 45 minutes. But it does, A, allow for problems with traffic or something like that, and B, allow them to get to school and have a conversation with their friends about the upcoming exam, which gets their brain into gear for the exam. Okay, I think this is the last one from me, and then I'll hand over to Sir. Exam regulations. I need to mention this to you because it's the first time for many of you that you'll have been through it. We we have to be a licensed examination centre, and to keep that licence, we have to follow exam board regulations and rules. Okay? Which means if your child or any child does something that breaks an exam regulation, we have to report it to the exam board. Some things may seem very, very minor, some things can be quite major. The exam board makes the decision on the outcome of what happened. We report situation X occurred, and the exam board say, this is our decision as to what now needs to happen. Please be aware they have lots of things at their disposal, but they can disqualify a student from a paper, and we have no control. They can disqualify them from a whole subject, and ultimately they can disqualify them from every exam with that exam board if they think it's serious enough. And given that 90+% of our exams are with Cambridge, that's quite a big problem for that student. Okay. Right, I'm going to hand over to Sir, and then we'll do some opportunity for questions afterwards.
Hello, so my name is Paul McGee. I'm the exams manager here at ISB. I'm just going to go through some more admin type stuff with you. So sort of went over the students and what to expect. I'm just going to go over the admin and the paperwork and fees, etc. So your children have all been given their statement of entry forms. The majority of our exams are with Cambridge. We only have 2 exams that aren't with Cambridge, and that's psychology and media studies. So if your child takes either of them, they'll have 2 statement of entries, one for all of their Cambridge exams and one for all of their AQA exams. If your child takes media and psychology and they're only in year 9, they'll only have 1 statement of entry because that's their 2 options. So your child, they should have brought them home for checking by now. They got them over a week ago. If you haven't seen it, you could talk to me at the end. I can take a note of your name and send another one home. I see some people nodding, yeah. Couple of things that you have to do. The children have all been told, go around your teachers, check that you've entered me through the right exam. The right, each exam's got different options depending on what level they're doing and how many papers. It's the children and teachers' responsibility to make sure all of that is correct. It is the parents' responsibility to make sure the name is spelled correctly. Lots of people they have their proper Chinese or proper Malay name, but they use a different name in school. You need to make sure it's the exact way that you want it on their certificate. Okay? And normally it's your passport name, because that's what the IB require when they get to year 12. If they have a very long Malay name, which maybe some royal family have the very long names. If they've got a name like that, we have to apply to the exam board to make that work because there is a character limit. If that's the case, you could speak to me separate and I can take a note. Okay, but where possible, if you could shorten things down, so I think is it Haji becomes HJ. If you could do things like that, that would be great, shorten it down a bit. You also need to check that the date of birth is correct, so we take the information off the computer, but it's very easy for me to accidentally put in an 8 instead of a 9 and make it August instead of September. So if you could just double check please, and again check that the gender is correct. So I've had about, out of the 192 students we've had to register, I've had about 80 responses, and so far I've only made 1 mistake with gender, so that's pretty good, but it does happen. Okay, so please do check carefully. There is a letter with the form that explains the situation, so all the corrections need to be made by the 9th of February. Any mistakes after that that come from us as a school, we'll deal with. Any mistakes that you've signed on to say the name's spelt this way and you've said it's okay, and then you come back and say actually we want it different, you need to pay the extra fees to change that because the exam board charges extra fees. Now depending on when it happens, it could be as low as $30 if you didn't notice, all the way until May it could be as high as $150. And sometimes they charge per exam as well. So once we get all the forms back, the students have sat the exams, we'll reprint everything, we'll get it all out as quickly as possible. The 9th is the Friday, and the 9 and 10 students don't take the exams till Monday and Tuesday, so we do have a bit of an extension from the exam board for the week after. But we hope that the only changes that might need to be made is the student entering the exam or not. That's free to decide. The name changes need to be sorted before the 9th of February. Okay, so that's an example of the AQA form. You can see where the parents need to check. Underneath that box, I've had to blank it out because it's personal information, but underneath that there's a student's name, the student's date of birth, and the student's gender. So that's where you're looking on the AQA form. And then the students and teachers check the bottom bit. Same with the Cambridge form. It's a bit more detailed. You need to check where it says parents. There's a bit that says English first language, not specified. We don't have to tell that to the exam board. It's optional, so you don't have to worry about filling any of those boxes in. Anything that's black, national ID, UCI, we don't have to disclose, so we just leave that blank. Okay, it's just name, date of birth, gender. And then you can see at the bottom, that's where all the exams are listed. And there's different options and different codes. So for example, the one at the very bottom says resistant materials. Some students take graphics, so it'll say graphic properties instead. So the students and the teachers will check that. You don't have to worry too much, but just ask your student, your children, are you sure this is correct? And you just sign the form, send it back into school, and we'll update any changes. And then lastly, fees. It is about, approximately, depending on the exchange rate, the financials and how things change, it's about $115 per exam. For our students in Year 11 who are taking coordinated sciences, that's a double exam because they get 2 grades, so it's $230. Now, we used to charge an admin fee that you would pay at the start of Year 10, and it would cover all of Year 10 and Year 11. But now we've moved to 1-year exams, we're splitting the admin fee up per year. It's beneficial to you as parents because if you stay for Year 9 and then you leave the school because you're leaving the country, you've only paid for 1 year's admin fees. You haven't paid for 10 and 11, and we don't have to try and sort out refunds and all that kind of stuff. It's just a lot more simple. So there's an example of a Year 9 student who's taking computer science, media studies, and their admin charge. It will cost approximately $380 for their 2 exams. The admin fee is to pay for all of the shipping. It's very expensive to send everything back to the UK. Unfortunately, we have to pay for that. It's very expensive. It pays for external invigilators. It pays for anything admin-wise, all of the stationery, all of the equipment, etc. The $115 is what the exam board charges for your child to sit the exam. Okay. If you have any questions about that, you can ask. I guess we'll have a question and answer session at the end, or if you want to speak to one of us privately, you can do it. The fees, I think, will be coming out. You'll get an invoice sometime in March, possibly April. They need to be paid preferably before the student takes the exam. If there's an issue, speak to us, but certainly if the fees aren't paid, basically when the certificate gets delivered, we don't give out certificate or results, so you just need to try and pay the exam fees as quickly as possible to the finance office, but you'll get an invoice sometime in March or April. I think that's my last one.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a video that's produced by Cambridge. It's only about 4 minutes long. We'll attach it to this at the end so you can watch it afterwards. But I'm conscious of time, so do we have any questions that people want to raise? Yes. What's the Year 11 admin charge this year? There is an admin charge if it wasn't paid at the start of Year 10, but what is it for Year 11 this year? We'll check that and we'll put that on the information, but it is 300 or 350, something like that. Yeah. We'll explain. When we send this out, we'll put a letter with it that explains that in detail, because there is a difference between the 9s and the 11s, etc. Okay. Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
I've noticed the last time candidate number.
Oh, you don't have to check the candidate number. We said that as a school, you just need to check the spelling of the name, the date of birth and the gender. But the candidate number, I said.
And it is useful for the students. The students need to know their candidate number because they have to write it on every exam paper when they get in there. We do put a little card on their table that has all of that information on there, but really it's something that they just need to get ingrained in their brain. This is my candidate number and I need to put it on every exam paper. Yes? Okay, for the purposes of those who couldn't hear that on the camera, the question was about study times for students in residence. We will, through our residence staff are aware of these recommendations, and we will be making sure in residence that those students get the requisite support they need for these exams, which may include the same amount of times, etc., etc. Yeah. Okay, I'm conscious of the time now, so what I'm going to say is thank you for coming along this morning. I'll stay around for a few minutes if you want to ask individual questions, as will Sir, but otherwise, thank you very much.